it's easy for people to call out white saviorism, but a lot of times people don't think about this kind of American, or even for a family in the UK, exceptionalism that's kind of ingrained in you. If you don't really check it, you can really feel like you about this work and you about our people, but there's these little kernels of just white supremacy in our brain that you got to kind of root out and check.
Greetings to you, Duan. Thank you for joining us. Before I give you an opportunity to introduce yourself, I'm just going to introduce you by saying some of the things that Kwabena says about you. He said that he's very, very proud to have your spirit or your bloodline within the community. He describes you as a brother in the war, that you are part of the struggle, a revolutionary in your own field, and that you are passionate about Pan-Africanism. He says you're an MMA fighter. You're very deep into your history, and yeah, for these reasons, he's very, very proud to have you as part of the community. He also mentioned that you have an honorary title in Nigeria.
Yes, yes. About a year and a half ago now, I was coronated to High Chief in Ekpeland and near Port Harcourt, but yes, indeed, in Nigeria.
Congratulations on that title.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
So perhaps you could now tell us a bit about yourself. We kind of get the sense you're very passionate, active, learned, on social media as well as in physical real life. So yeah, it would be good to hear a bit more from you about what you do and who you are.
Sure. I'll say the way I would describe myself is just someone who is about African people, about African liberation. It's the most important thing to me in the world. Like, regardless of what I'm doing, in some way, finding ways to struggle for liberation and connect our people. It's always in my mind. Professionally, as our brother said, I was a prize fighter. I was an MMA fighter. I retired about a year and a half ago. So at this point, I do a type of corporate security, like personal security. And this transition has been wonderful for me. I'm a black belt in jiu-jitsu, which is a grappling art. So teaching self-defense is something that's very important to me in general, especially for our people. But I primarily teach self-defense to combat gender-based violence and to support gender-based violence prevention. So in addition to fighting for African liberation, fighting for gender equity is something that's very important to me as well. As our brother says, I'm a Pan-Africanist. So I prioritize African solidarity over anything. I've been to 9 African countries. Like I said, in this job, this field that I'm working now, I can't travel as much as I used to. But once I get some time, I'll be back on the traveling grind. Um, African people are very, very, very important to me. Our yeah, maintaining our humanity even within the context of this struggle, finding more ways to learn about our history, but more importantly, how to use it as a liberatory tool. Finding different ways to connect to our people and empower our people is something that's very important to me, which honestly was the inception of my connection with our dear brother Kwabena.
Oh wow. Yeah, we'll get into that as well shortly. Would you say you've always been that way minded in terms of Pan-Africanism and liberation of our people?
Since a young age, I'll say, since a young age. I mean, I'm from the deep south in the States, so it's not too many. Yeah, it's a specific I'll say culture and ethos that's kind of instilled in you. And at a young age, a lot of things didn't make sense. So once I started questioning African people's positionality, but once I learned that I was an African, let me start there. Questioning our positionality and trying to make sense of why we were relegated, to the position that we're in. You just kind of go down this path of education, and then as I grew deeper into consciousness, so I'll say elevated higher into consciousness, I found Pan-Africanism, and obviously I'm biased, but yeah, this is the only way, as the late great Dr. Clark said, Pan-Africanism or perish.
And so when did you get your first sort of yearning to travel to Africa? Where did you go?
I was 30 years old, so this was about 2015, 8 years ago. I went to Uganda. When I was younger, I used to be a b-boy, which is like a break dancer. And there was a brother that I met on Instagram. He had a organization called Breakdance Project Uganda. So we had chopped it up for a while, and I think at that point I was fighting professionally, but I was like really on the grind. And I had a training opportunity in Brazil that was going to be paid for, and I was planning on being there for about 2 weeks. Something happened with the work visa. So long story short, I couldn't go, but I was already prepared to go somewhere. So I had already been chopping it up with his brother, trying to support the organization. And I was like, you know what, let me, if I can go all these other places, let me go home. So went to Uganda, and yeah, it was wonderful in every way imaginable. I remember specifically getting off the airplane and just seeing a sea of Black people, and I had never seen so many Black people in my life. And for our family that is not in Europe or not in the States, it may be hard to understand just how significant that is, but it was, yeah, I felt like this is where I was supposed to be.
A unique place to travel to. Not many people travel straight to Uganda, as the first African country.
Yeah, Ghana pretty much has the market corner on being a lot of people's first destination in on the continent, and that's a wonderful thing. But it's just the economy. It's a tourist economy setup. It's a little more structured and fortified. So Uganda, yeah, like you said, it was unique. But I'm glad I went there first.
And do you still have ties over there in Uganda?
Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. I got some some real close. I was about to say homies, but family. Yeah, I've been to Uganda more than any other African country. I've been to Uganda 7 times now. I haven't gone as much in the past few years because I'm primarily going to Nigeria when I travel. But yeah, I got some people that I love very much there.
So which other African countries have you traveled to since then?
Uganda, Nigeria, of course, Benin, um, what is this? Kenya, Senegal. Senegal went for about a week in 2016 to do some seminars. Um, Ghana once, but not as long as I would have liked. And I got to go back because I got to, really peep this land the way I want to and chop it up with our brother. And this is interesting. It's still the continent, but Morocco. That was
Oh,
on some
wow.
business. But no, guy, I know. We got. But I was up there, and is that 7? Where else did we stop by? South Africa very briefly, but again, I want to really get down there, especially if our brother Malema gets elected. I'm getting another house down there if our brother gets elected. So
Amazing. I mean, that's way more African countries than I've been to. And I was born on the continent. Would you say your perspective and viewpoints have been shaped somewhat with all that traveling?
sure, sure. By the time I went to Uganda, like I said, I was 30, so I felt like I was really rooted, obviously in my consciousness, but in my understanding. But no, I was incredibly naive. I remember the second African country I went to, the second country on the continent I went to was Senegal, to teach some workshops. And obviously this is West Africa, so I went far east to West Africa. And again, in my naivete, I don't know. I did a lot of assuming. Let me just say that. And I had to learn, like, no, this is a completely different country, because in the States, everything is separated, and obviously, it's a state, but there's not much different. There may be some small cultural differences, but for the most part, everything is the same. Even in Nigeria, when I went to Cotonou, which is right to the right of it, I went to see one of our dear brothers, Kimmy, who's putting in tremendous work there. It's only 60 miles from there. So again, I did a lot of assuming. I could not imagine how different something could be, the culture, the laws, the people. But yeah, yeah, definitely learned some lessons. Fortunately, the hard lessons that I've learned, I've lucked out, and there hasn't been any consequences. But just yeah, learning more about the world, myself, our people, even this kind of entitlement and a lot of things, even like what I would call a lot of people. It's easy for people to call out white saviorism, but a lot of times people don't think about this kind of American, or even for a family in the UK, exceptionalism that's kind of ingrained in you. If you don't really check it, you can really feel like you about this work and you about our people, but there's these little kernels of just white supremacy in our brain that you got to kind of root out and check sometimes. And like I said, I've been fortunate that the education that I've had have been things that I'll say the missteps have been things that have existed in my mind, um, and I've been able to kind of root them out and learn, as opposed to things that have happened. So yeah,
The things that we've been exposed to, from probably from the moment we are not living indigenously anymore. We're exposed to so much wherever we're living, whether on the continent, in Europe, in Americas, and yeah, we do have to check ourselves when we go back there and kind of think, where is this mindset coming from, before acting according to that mindset, which would not help the cause at all.
that's right. Even if you feel like even the urge to help, when it comes to, even if your heart is really is in the right place, right? But there's a lot to that. I don't want to hijack the conversation, but yeah, that's important too.
Absolutely. Almost especially then, because at times when we move from the West to Africa on holiday or to actually relocate, we have this idea that we are helping in some way, which is good. It comes from a good place. Um, However, we do definitely have to check where that mindset and how we're approaching that. I think Kwabena used the analogy recently about making sure that we don't drag people in as we're drowning, because in many ways in the West we're drowning as a culture of people. So it's good to not take those mindsets into that environment.
That's right.
People in with it.
Yes,
Yeah.
indeed.
So you mentioned you're from the deep south. um I'd like to know a bit more about your journey, your to becoming a landowner essentially. How did you meet Kwabena, and what convinced you to, or what made you want to become a landowner in Africa?
Yeah, I purchased some land in the States. I've got a bit of land on this side, and when it came to our brother, in Asarci, it didn't take much convincing. I'll say once we came in contact online on Instagram, and I believe it was 2020. So obviously, y'all know everybody kind of stuck, inside. So I'm putting a lot of time into to started this contest, Afro Trivia, where it's like a African centered, Pan Africanist centered trivia contest online. Then I was doing a bunch of educative workshops and lives with a good brother of mine, Tyrone, from an organization called Bookman Academy. And through our shared interest and love of African people, Quab and I found each other. When I saw what our brother was doing with the Asarci, now at that time this was not near the inception, but it was still a bit earlier. So I just thought it was the most ambitious project that I had seen, in the contemporary by. I mean, I was about to say any African person, but maybe anybody. Period. I mean, it was wonderful. The concept was wonderful, and I think that African people, we have to be ambitious. We have to be audacious. We have to think big. And this was not just an idea that existed in our brother's mind. It came to fruition, and he had it rolling. And then once I saw, another thing that I loved even before that was that the streets are named after our revolutionary ancestors. This is something that really pulled me in. And I like to say my spiritual godfather, Dr. Amos Wilson, who is just yeah, don't get me started. Y'all really don't want to get me started talking about Dr. Amos. I'll go on all day. But when I saw he had a Dr. Amos Wilson Street, I said, listen, if there's any Dr. Amos Wilson Street that exists anywhere on the globe, on in the universe, I'm gonna get it, if it's gettable. So yeah. And then of course we built a personal relationship. We met a few times. We met in the last time in London. I had um, had a honey out there at the time, and I was visiting, met our brother, and we also our brother Tyrone, who I told you about from Bookmont Academy, put them in contact. Our brother Sheun, who's a tremendous musician in Nigeria, but he happened to be in London, so we had a real good I'll say planning session, and it was wonderful. So yeah, Quabbin is my man for life.
Amazing. So you've mentioned so many wonderful things there. We only have time to get into a few of that. So if I were to keep it relevant to land, you've mentioned you've got some land in the US.
Sure.
That's again not something that's very widely done in the West in our community. So how did that come about? And what is your advice to other young men, you know, or older men or the community?
Yeah, I read a book. What was his brother's name? I'll think of it in a moment. Kimbrough, the thing Dennis Kimbrough. He had another book called The Wealth Choice. You know, and he specifically said, I'm paraphrasing, but they're not making more land. You know, and I remember I was very young. I was maybe 17. Obviously, my paper wasn't like that, but that's something that stood out in my mind. I knew whenever I had the ability to get some land that I would. There's just so much that you can do with land. And then again, when I was deeper into my studies, not specifically within academia, but about our people, our history. Ultimately, this is a battle and a struggle for resources, and primary resources land. You know, so to me, in my mind, it is I would say revolutionary, but also liberatory, you know, because when it's yours, you can do anything you want with it. Now, I've to be a little more specific, the land that I have in Prampram, I'm still thinking about what I want to do in the long term. Obviously, it's going to be something in service of our people. You know, Kwame and I went back and forth about that. He's like, "Oh, the one, you know, it got to be, you know, you got to live in it." And I'm like, "Oh, I want to." Initially, I was like, "Oh, I want to do a library, a free library. I want to do this." And you know, he was telling me that, you know, we got some wonderful family that's doing some good work on the ancestral wall and connect with them. But regardless of what, you know, land is where it's at. It's the best investment, and not just from when I say investment, family. A lot of times we naturally think from a capitalist perspective, but just even in ourselves. So I would suggest anyone, if you ever have the ability to get land, please do whatever. Even if it takes like, you know, a bit of sacrifice in the moment, it is something that will always it will for the most part reward you. The problem comes in when people try to get land and do things that they don't know nothing about doing. You'll hear people say, "Oh, you know, get some land. You can put this on, and you can do this." But if you don't know about it, don't just sit. You ain't got to do nothing. Just sit for a second. You know, get your paper right. Learn. You know, educate yourself, and talk to people who are I'll say um, read up in a specific subject that you want to kind of use to maximize it.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, buying land and then doing potentially something that's way outside of your means to do is probably best avoided.
Happens all the time.
Yeah, and one could buy land and keep it, right, for generations because it's
Yes,
not going anywhere.
yes,
Yeah,
yes. And I get it. Like you want to. A lot of times when people drop what they would consider a significant amount of money, you think, "Oh, I need this kickback. I need this return fast to make it worth it." But again, we got time on it. We got time on our side. And again, if you do want to use it, just again educate yourself. Just learn. You know, learn about the whatever it is that you want to do, and get with people who also have been doing that, and just be aware of a lot of the kind of pitfalls out here. There's a lot of people who make a lot of money off of convincing folk that they can do things. Once you hear somebody talking about, "Oh, it's simple," or "All you got to do," you know it's a problem. When somebody come with this, "All you got to do," it's a problem.
so I'm interested to know more about your approach regarding our community and going generations forward. You know, we should not just be thinking of today. We should
Sure,
be thinking really about 7 generations ahead.
that's right.
Um, as an obligation. So I'm interested to know, do you have children? Do
I
you find
do.
that your children, are they in the West? Do they have interest in Africa? How do you,
Yeah,
reduce
yeah.
that into?
I have two daughters. My oldest is 18. My youngest is 14. Um, yeah, they're my babies. They live with me. Um, and they obviously, dealing with the things you're gonna deal with young folk. But they're very much they love themselves, they love our people, they're passionate. And I always say sometimes it's like a fight, it's a battle, for their values against, all of the trappings and enchantments of the West. But I'm here for it. They're not taking my babies. But yeah, I do at some point, this is further down the line. I will, pass this on to them. Find ways that it can make, it can be a pillar of support for them in their life. Like I said, I'm just sitting right now trying to save and trying to think. But yeah, they're definitely gonna be and because when I think about lineage, this is something that is important. As African people, we have to understand. Well, a lot of times, if you think of it as like a relay race, we just kind of, we don't hand the baton off efficiently, which just makes the runner have to do more to catch up. And we really have to build some momentum. This is all about momentum. So African people, we have to get this momentum going. We do that by educating ourselves, supporting each other, and putting ourselves in positions to pass things down. When you bring up children, a lot of folk compete with their children when they don't even realize it. They're in competition with their children. But yeah, I want to set them up for success and just give them a few things that even if I think about what I had and didn't have when I was their age, I had, we didn't have a lot, but we had love. I was never hungry, and I never felt unsupported. So something my parents gave me, especially my mother, she always told me I could do whatever I want. Whatever you want to do it. Even now, it's tough because if I ask her for some advice and I want to do something, I just ask her, she'll say do it. So I need to stop because she always gonna say, "Do want to do what you want to do, follow your heart, do what you want to do." But but yeah, I want to give them more, and then they build on that, and it just, again, momentum.
Absolutely. You mentioned something that's quite a key issue at times, I think, is that whole competing against your children, which
Yeah,
there's no need for that at all within the community. It's always about, planting trees that you may never sit under the shade of.
that's it.
If you had one house growing up, maybe you'd at least have another one that your child can have a head start with. If you maybe spoke one language, perhaps you'll encourage your children to speak too, So it's always about
Yes, indeed.
expanding through them or your grandchildren, or putting yourself in a position where you're able to instill that wisdom to the younger ones, if not your children, then your grandchildren, for sure.
Right. You got to have plans for these kids. If you don't have plans for them, Babylon will. Where the West will make some plans for the children. So you got to have plans for these babies.
Absolutely. So yeah, as almost we're closing up,
Okay.
is there anything that you wish you did earlier? Yeah, is there anything you wish you did sooner than you did?
No, everything worked out. So I'll say this: if there's something that there are a few things I was like, oh, okay, maybe would have made sense if I started this earlier. I don't know if everything would have played out the way they played out. And things are wonderful now. So I'm grateful. Even the hard lessons and ancestors know your brother's been through it. But again, we take them lessons. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful for all the experiences, all the education. Again, not just in the books, but just through being bit. Sometimes you get bit. You learn these hard lessons. Um, Especially when it comes to relationships, and I don't mean just romantic relationships, but just interpersonal relationships in general. Taking these lessons, and being in a position to kind of extend grace and I'll say credit off the bat now. That feels good. So when I meet somebody, somebody African anyway, they're not starting from a deficit. Their credit is on, is high. And then after that, I will deal with them accordingly. But no, everything worked out the way it's supposed to work out. I'm grateful for the future.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I think the last thing I'd like to ask you is if you have any words of wisdom, and that could be to the community in general, to anybody.
Yeah, to keep it short, I will quote someone much more knowledgeable than myself, the late great uh, Dr. Amos Wilson. Leave your family with a quote. Dr. Amos said, "If we don't know who we are, then we are whoever someone tells us we are." And I love this quote. I love this quote. And you know what? I was about to expound on that, but you know, y'all can do that work. I will give you one more. Dr. Amos said, Dr. Amos said, when you have an identity, it is difficult for another people to impose a set of values on you. And I think in this day and age, it is a battle of values, you know, in terms of some of the things that are obstructing African liberation. Obviously, you know, the system is very sophisticated, you know, very sophisticated. But its effectiveness now is in instilling and inculcating a value system into us that serve us. And that's, you know, by our desires, you know, creating desires in us that don't serve us, you know. So prioritizing that is something that's very important. Think of, you know, why do we want the things we want? What do we want? And again, are we thinking big enough? Bringing it back to our brother Quab and how ambitious this project is. You know, we need to think big. You know, we have a duty. We have a obligation. If I could be a little more specific, we have what we'll say an ancestral mandate, you know, to build on their revolutionary legacy. And if we're honest about it, not to be crass, but a lot of us are just bullshitting. You know, we're just like, okay, well, things aren't as bad as they could have been. You know, I'm happy with my own little corner in the slave quarters because I'm keeping it clean, you know, as opposed to burning this thing down and freeing our people. So I just want our people to think big. I want our people to love their Black self, and love each other. And last thing I'll say, I know a lot of times, you know, we're speaking in abstractions, and you know, when I talk about people getting land and things they can do, and they say, where do I start? You know, we got to find our way. You know, cultivate and develop your skill. That in this system, that's what's going to serve you. But more so than anything else, you know, the blackest thing you can do, the most revolutionary thing you can do, is be aware of the way we talk to each other, the way we treat each other. You know, if we can extend this grace to other people, we damn sure can do it for ourselves, and assume the best in each other. You know, I think that's very important, and in ourselves as well.
Howard, thank you very much. I've just thought of something else, if I may. Lastly,
Yes.
would you recommend buying land with Asarci? Specifically, why?
Let me say this, right? I didn't want to go too. Look, I'm just gonna say it because it saves time instead of trying to be politically correct. Y'all, it's a lot of scammy bullshit out here. You know, it's a lot of people playing. It's a lot of people selling land 2, 3, 4 times over. It's a lot of people selling. I mean, when I say that, I mean selling land, the same land to multiple people. You know, it's a lot of people selling land that just ain't worth nothing. You know, our brother, you know, is about his business, and I love that about him. But our brother loves our people. And our brother has created something that I have not seen anywhere, and I know nothing like it will be recreated, because everything is just so structured, you know, and fortified. You know, the community is connected to each other in ways that, you know, yeah, it just, in one word, yes, I would suggest buying land from Asarci. I would never buy land from any other company besides Asarci in Ghana. Maybe like, if you know, until Asarci branches out. If Asarci was to branch out in some other countries, then yes, I'm buying land from them there. But hands down, it this is really a testament, not only to our brother and his family's vision, but to our people. And I'm proud to be a part of it. I'm proud to be a part of it. And when you see on a larger scale, when you see African people doing things on behalf of each other, family, we have to support them. We have to support them, and through supporting them, we're supporting us. And our dear brother has created a wonderful, I'll say, project for us to support ourselves through. And I'm grateful for it. You know, it's been a wonderful experience. To be honest, I'm almost pretty sure I owe my brother some money. So Quavin, if you're seeing this, you know, holla at me. Yeah, it's y'all. It's been wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. Last thing I'll say, you know, Quavin again is so efficient with it. They have a lot of groups set up for communication. Um, you know, people who live on the same, you know, in the same area that you live. It's every level of accountability that you can even imagine it, and even more is in place.
Duan, highest gratitude. Thank you so much for your time. On
Yes,
behalf of
indeed.
Abana and Asarci and the whole community, thank you. And I wish you the best. I look forward
Thank you,
to
sister.
seeing you one day, perhaps at one of the
For
community
sure.
events or in
For
Ghana.
sure. Much love and respect, my sister. And everyone else, be safe. I appreciate you. We keep striving. Okay. Peace. Peace.